and practicing, and yeah, I think it's part of also of dealing with people and helping people, and probably more on the emotional side of things, because medicine, you can get medicine from anybody, but sometimes people need some other help.
Kind of you need to sometimes develop like a whole.
So I think that it's why I still practice. I, for example, you see a lot of people with stress, anxiety, depression, all those kind of things. But people come for a problem, like they have like a toe problem or something. But I see that just talking to them, I see them that they're very anxious people, very stressful people. So I touch the subject and I try to help give them some idea. So.
That's my Persian advocates talking.
So then when you came to Australia, did you have to do it all over again, or?
No, from Canada, no. It was just paperwork and like just transfer of.
I had one of the people that come here to teaching is also a GP, and she studied in Zimbabwe, I think. So she came here and she had to do the whole registration again and sit for exams. She was a young mother, so she almost gave up. It was hard.
Yeah, for me it was it was at the point when I went to Canada that I accepted that the program would not. I did some holistic medicine and stuff like that, and then at one point we were on social welfare, my family, and the lady from the social said, why you don't try to take your exam again, because how you live how you take care of your family, So I said, okay, that's they said I will give you money for books and for exams, take the exams, so this is why I went back to medicine.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you did it, I guess. All right, start recording. So did we start this morning with prayer to Manjushri?
I was teaching. I was
Manjushri.
All right.
And then I sat down at home, so I'm going to get the teaching in before I come up to tube. And I turned on my iPad, and it was 2:18, and I went, well, obviously I'm not going to get that done before I go. So I haven't watched the teaching.
All right.
That's a long time between then and now.
Well, we can give you a preview and a summary. Oh, not this, sorry. All right, let's do the prayers.
Said to Turkey, I said, well, between all of us, we're keeping the healthcare system truly alive in this country.
Yeah. Maybe we should get a life support machine for the center. Just kind of have a rotation.
We need something, don't we?
Yeah.
I saw a video a while ago about a monastery, Buddhist monastery. I'm not sure it was in Tibet or somewhere else. Almost 80% of the monks, they had this infection in the stomach, which is called H. pylori. So I'm not sure how they call it in Tibetan, that disease, or something.
Call it POA.
Yeah.
POA.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have it also a lot in Nepal.
So yes, that people came there to help them, to give them the medication to treat them. Because there some of them suffering didn't say anything for a long time.
Yeah. All right, let's start with the prayers, with the Heart Sutra.
Good.
I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem, thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vajjan mountain in Rajgir together with a great community of monks and a great community of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in concentration on categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that in the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon like this correctly and repeatedly, beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on up to including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on up to including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is also no exalted wisdom, nor attainment, and also non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on and dwell on the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to the unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment and reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of the great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all sufferings should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata gati gati paragati para samgate bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commanded the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputras, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain the state of the Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain the state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by may I attain the state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings.
Could you go back to the Heart Sutra, please? And just at the very bottom, just at the very end. No, what is it? What's the Gandharvas?
Gandharva. So Gandharvas are those smell eaters.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Did you say snail or smell?
Smell.
Smell eaters.
Yeah, it sounds very Harry Potter, doesn't it?
I don't know.
Let's see.
So what realm are they in? Well, I mean, yeah, what
I would say probably hungry ghosts.
hungry ghosts.
Pretas. Yeah.
Pretas.
Yeah. No, smell eaters in the sense that they're sustained to get the nourishment from aromas.
They're the ones that have the salt.
Yes,
That's what we offer the salt.
Yeah.
And they say they're the ones that can cause pandemics, and if we upset them too much, they can cause a lot of trouble for
The
us.
coronavirus?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know about those things. I think that Tibetans have an obsession with nagas, nagas and other things. So
Yeah.
whenever they start with a naga and other thing, I think myself, I don't know. I don't understand that. So
And there is some also tradition in India. They're saying that there are snake-like beings, like a place.
Yeah, those are the nagas, I believe.
Nagaloka,
Yeah. Yeah. Now, yeah, loka is kind of locality of the world, the place, and naga. All right. So we haven't covered much distance before today. I think that we've covered only half a verse, not even a complete verse. Yeah, which we had, I think, good discussion. It makes it hard for me then to kind of think of, well, what can I say? So what I thought of doing today was to cover a couple of secondary offenses. So we always have a backup plan for secondary offenses. But also I wanted to go back to a couple of things that we have discussed in the last couple of days, today and also the day before. Also, I had a thinking yesterday, we had a long conversation about how to cultivate patience, and also, a lot of it was in relation to what Dechen was asking. And also I had a bit of like just a short conversation after the session with Dechen. So I think that, so I was trying to, in my mind, to construct the whole conversation that we had yesterday and to revisit that and kind of try to think of if I have another way of looking at that. So I think that just to summarize the question, is like, I think that the question was like, we have here a lot of argumentation that is going back and forth, that uses quite a lot of rational thinking in relation to the cultivation of patience. But then there is the emotional side of it, like, how do you actually do that? How do you do that in practice? So it's more like, as you said, Deshin, like right brain, left brain, right hemisphere, left hemisphere. You didn't use that term, the emotional side, but I think that that's probably the question. How do you bring it from the academic side, from the logical side, to something that is heartfelt, to something that is, that happens in practicality? So I think that's the gist of the question. Would you say so? Yeah. Which I think that is, it's, so, yeah, I think that was the question. And when I tried to then think about it more at home, I was kind of thinking that it has, first of all, it seems that to practice patience, the assumption that is made is that you need to, first of all, think of these verses, to listen to those teachings, think about them, and then in meditation you practice patience. But it seems that this type of teachings or this type of practice does not necessarily involve sitting in a meditation posture. I mean, I think that if you sit in a meditation posture where you allow your mind to look at a situation from different perspectives, and then you try to bring down a disturbance of mind, that's good because you're giving yourself space. But it's not necessarily that you have to do it in a formal meditation session, because I think that it's the type of practice and behavior that informs whatever, or it's a type of teaching that informs whatever we do on a practical level on a day-to-day basis. So we have a certain situation happening at a place of work, the office or otherwise. We're sitting on a train, we're walking somewhere, we have an interaction with someone, at the shops. And in all those situations, we're not sitting in a formal meditation session, but it depends upon previous familiarity that we have developed with those things. We want to have those arguments at the tip of our fingers to try to at least exert some control over our mind in facing certain situations. So it depends upon, the ability to do that requires a lot of skills, which depends on, first of all, having thought about it thoroughly, not kind of filed it somewhere at the back of our mind and not used it, but to think about it constantly and also to find opportunities to put it into practice. So that's one thing. But also, if we give ourselves the time to do think about it in meditation, I think that at least for me, it takes a lot of time for the mind to calm down. So I can think of at least one situation in the last 12 months that has disturbed my mind. And there was a certain situation where I felt that that someone hurt me. Someone did something that I did not like. So I was trying to think of arguments such as the ones that some of the arguments that Shantideva presented here. So I was able to rationalize with what Shantideva said, but there was still that kind of mental hurt that was being felt, that I felt. It wasn't enough just to think of those verses and the arguments to completely get rid of that iffy feeling that you are left with in those situations. So when I thought about it at home yesterday, I thought that over time it worked. Over time, if I try to think about those points again and again over a certain time, over a certain duration, and I think that over weeks it worked. Sometimes they say that time heals, but I think that, it wasn't just that time heals. I think that also just thinking about those situations and kind of trying to think of a certain scenario from different perspectives over time kind of, I think, lessens the amount of pain that you have. So I'm wondering if you guys or people at home have something else to add on top of that.
Well, just adding another layer of complexity more is that you have, an emotional response, as well as a logical response, but you also have a sensational response. That if you feel really uncomfortable or angry, there's actually a sensation in your body that kind of takes over, the adrenaline gets going.
Yeah.
So even if you know how to deal with it logically or how to calm yourself emotionally, at times there's something physically that's going on in your body that you also need to figure out how to settle. So it seems that there's several tools needed.
Yeah. And I agree with you. Kind of, I'm not sure that the people at home have heard that, but Shannon was saying that often in situation we have, the sensation, kind of the sensory response to that. So, our emotional state of mind also affects our body. So we have to deal with a certain situation, addressing different layers, different levels. There is the emotional level, you can say the rational level, but also the sensation level.
In fact, for me, these days, that often is the first clue. The physical, some here in the gut or, something like that, the others can all come a bit later. Yeah. But when I feel that, that's sort of like when the bells go, ding, ding, alert, doctor. Morning, Will Robinson, Will Robinson, you need to, apply something here. And it was because I've been, I'd like to thank you for reintroducing this topic, because I just thought, you can let it go, it's not that big a deal, So I really thank you for bringing it up again today, because with the meditation that I ended up leading today, which I thought I tried to squeeze too much in, but I've been really thinking about this transition between because I see that dealing with patience is dealing from an emptiness toolkit, as opposed to the bodhicitta mind transformation. It's all mind transformation. And so it was sort of going between the emptiness, but also making it more from the heart too. Because you do have an emotional response, so you want to bring in that bodhicitta heart stuff as well. So I ended up going between verse 31, which is, thanks to you, because you sort of said that we had been looking at this earlier, so I thought, okay, which says, hence, everything is governed by other factors, which in turn are governed by others. And in this way, nothing governs itself. So that's causes and conditions that causes a situation. anything that we can experience that sort of brings up the fact that we need to then experience patience. Then I sort of went to verse 48. So independent upon them, I purify many evils by patiently accepting the harms that they cause. And but independent upon them, they will fall into a hellish pain for a very long time. So, I really like the way that sequence sort of, highlighted the emptiness of it and the need for practicing patience from that perspective. And it was at that point that in the meditation where I tried to see, so things are like an illusion. They aren't the way we think they are. They're more like an apparition and stuff. But then in the dependence, I purified many evils by patiently accepting harm. So then the gratitude, like, this is the opportunity to really, because of their ill will towards me, I get the opportunity to purify, which is just, I get an opportunity to practice, it's to progress on the path and ultimately help everybody. And then at the very end, that independent upon them, they all fall into a hellish jump. So then you go into bodhicitta.
Yeah.
So it was really, I played with that sequence in my meditation. I'm not quite sure. I didn't have enough time, I must admit. I ended up rushing it.
Well, it's such a massive topic. I mean, there's so many verses in this chapter, and I think, as I said a couple of times before, the way that Shantideva teaches it in this chapter was, rather than teaching the 3 types of patience, each one on its own, he says that in this scenario, this is how you practice the 3 types of patience. In the other scenario, this is how you practice the 3 types of patience. So because you look at one scenario from many different perspectives, you can practice patience by thinking of the ultimate level of emptiness. But just as well, you can practice patience by developing compassion towards a harm-doer. You can also practice patience by thinking of purification, or how you use suffering for your advantage in developing determination to live cyclic existence. So you attack just one situation from so many different perspectives that inevitably you run out of time if you try to do it in half an hour. So it's more like it really needs a lot of time. Now, so I mentioned that situation that I had, a few months ago, in the past 12 months. So coming back from New Zealand, I went into self-isolation. So I thought myself, well, I have time, can't leave home. I can explore different situations in my meditation. So first of all, I tried to approach that scenario that I had from different perspectives. And I've noticed that, first of all, it does trigger a physical response, kind of when you feel hurt or what have you, it does kind of trigger a physical response, but also your mind kind of, again, comes, kind of sinks down, it becomes a bit moody and so forth. So you try to look at it from different perspectives. And I think that over time it helps, so I try to look at it from emptiness perspective, from compassion perspective, from perspective of karma and so forth. So it was interesting because I've noticed, at least with respect to myself, that rationally it was working, but kind of in terms of damping down the emotional response to it, it took a lot of time. So there is, like, I think rational level, you can get it, relatively speaking, quickly. Allowing it to affect your body and mind, it requires time. So for that we need a lot of also, it's quite a cliche, but also for that we need patience. We need patience to allow it to penetrate the mind, to affect the mind. It is likely not to happen instantly. At least it doesn't happen instantly for me. But also I wanted to make another comment with respect to that kind of physical response to that, because I see that when we get angry, definitely we have physical response to anger, but also with other afflictive states of mind, like for example with attachment, particularly I think that with lust, so when it's already there and kind of there is like an effect on the body, it's already, you can say that you haven't stopped it. No, it's too late. I mean, of course, it's not too late. You can always stop. You can always attempt to stop it. But the idea is to recognize afflictive states of mind as they arise and try to deal with them as they arise. If we let them linger, if we let them take over, it'd be much harder to put a stop to them. And this is part of, this is, I think, one of the points that Shantideva highlights here. He says that the fuel of anger is mental unhappiness. So we want to catch mental unhappiness in the early stages. It takes constant repetition, constant reminding ourselves that this is what we need to do, because mental unhappiness can develop into anger, but it can also develop into other things, not only anger, but also to a sense of depression. And here when Shantideva teaches patience, it's not only applied to anger. I think that you can also apply to depression, to anxiety, to states to other states of mind which don't necessarily come only in the box of anger. So if we take those teachings on mind training to heart and develop kind of a long-term approach to it, and then try on a daily basis to just become more aware of what's happening in our mind, and to recognize more and more cases of mental unhappiness, then we have more opportunities to practice patience with them. We become more acquainted with that. So the emotional response and the physical response, I think, over time will be more, I wouldn't say balanced, but they would kind of decrease more and more.
About the unhappiness state, early unhappiness, I think unhappiness comes because our expectation, like you become unhappy because things doesn't happen the way you expect or you want to happen. That is, I think, the source of unhappiness in that case, or in most cases, is that you expect things to happen in a certain way and doesn't happen that way. So the things doesn't happen the way you want to happen.
Well, exactly. Verse 7 says, having found its fuel of mental unhappiness in the doing of what I do not wish for, and in the hindering of what I wish for. So you have an expectation either to be treated in a certain way and you don't get it, or you don't wish to be treated in a certain way and you still get it. So I guess it's a different way of saying that when your expectations are not met.
Yeah. So we have to work on that, I suppose, that like in the process of, we have to work on that. And then, yeah, it means equal. That doesn't matter what happens, you just have to keep your balance.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're striving for all the time, to have a more balanced reaction to it. As I think that the verse number 10 says that if there's something that I can do about it, why be unhappy? If there's nothing I can do about it, what's the use of being unhappy? So if we are able to, if we'd be able to respond to situations that we encounter in that way, we'd be much more balanced. Work in progress, isn't it? So what I thought of doing now is to quickly look at a couple of points that we've discussed before.
Have you looked at those questions there?
No?
Yeah, have you got those?
Wow.
They're having a bit of a conversation happening.
There is a side conversation. So I'll begin with Jane that wrote a message privately. So I just read it for the other people. So Geshe-la said today, in the context of karma, a seed for liberation, it's not necessarily virtue. Can I expand on this? I think that this is probably a debatable point that you would take up, if you were really good at debate, right? A monk or a nun that is taking that as a debate as a daily routine, then this is a hot point that you would be debating on the debate code.
That's the impression I got when
Yeah.
you brought it up.
Well, so we said normally that virtuous action is that which by type gives rise to happiness. It has the ability to give rise to happiness. Non-virtuous action is by type that which brings about negative fruition or suffering. This is roughly speaking, not precisely, but roughly speaking, the definition of virtue and non-virtue. Now, also we say that to create a virtue or non-virtue, it mainly depends upon your motivation. So if you have a positive motivation, your action becomes virtuous. If your motivation is non-virtuous, the action becomes non-virtuous. And then there are actions which are not specified. They were not specified in scripture, particularly in saying that this is virtue or this is non-virtue. Therefore, in English, we call them neutral actions, or these which were not specified. Anyway, so Geshe brought up today this story about someone that was in the previous life a pig, with going around a stupa. And there's also, I think that there is also that famous story about a cloud of dung that was taken around the stupa and a fly was landing on top of a piece of dung. That I think that was someone, as far as I remember, there was someone wanted to get ordained, right? So there was one guy that wanted to get ordained. He went to see Shariputra, I think. Shariputra said that he doesn't have roots of virtue for ordination. So the person was really depressed. Then they met the Buddha, and the Buddha said that he was able to see far greater than Shariputra. So he said that one of the person's previous life, he was a fly resting on a piece of dung that was taken around a stupa, and because those roots of virtue were created or what have you, then he did have those virtues that were right for ordination. So I think that those are the words that were used in this story. So Geshe said that how then do we reconcile the idea that for a virtuous action to be a virtuous action, you need to have a positive motivation, a virtuous motivation. And for a certain action to become non-virtuous, the motivation needs to be non-virtuous. Whereas if you're a fly, if you're a pig, you're going around the stupa, it is likely that you don't have a positive or negative motivation, but you still have roots of virtue, so to speak. I think that in the stories, they do speak about it in those, using the term roots of virtue. So Geshe was introducing a different interpretation. It was saying that rather than calling it roots of virtue, which necessitate a certain positive state of mind, positive motivation, virtuous motivation, it says that maybe we can call that seeds for liberation, seeds which are compatible with liberation. Which were, it seems that then they would relate to a certain scenario that was not necessarily created by positive or negative actions, motivation, sorry. And then when Geshe was saying that, I thought that we have many practices which are particularly emphasized in the FEMT organization, like blessing fish, blessing dogs, blessing goats, blessing this and that. And sometimes you might wonder, how does it actually help? If animals, fish, insects, and so forth, they're not aware of what's happening, they don't have a particular virtuous motivation, they don't see a stupa as stupa, how does it help their mind? Maybe you can look at it from the viewpoint of the presentation of the position that Geshe presented, that if it's a seed compatible with liberation, wasn't necessarily created by virtue. I think that it's debatable. And when I say it's debatable, I'm not suggesting that Geshe is wrong. I'm just saying that it's a point that is worth exploring in debate in order to develop a better understanding of those scenarios, which you find in scripture, but cannot really be explained just using the notion that you need to have a virtuous state of mind in order to create a virtuous action.
That's because this sort of seed that is compatible with liberation requires faith.
Requires?
Faith.
Well, does a pig have faith in the stupa when they're taking around the stupa?
No. I don't think it's a pig. It's not the pig that has to have faith.
So how do they?
It's us that has to have the faith in seeing that is valid.
Oh yeah.
So that's what,
that's
okay. Why we do it.
Yeah.
But there was the talk also about the people in Buddha's time which were contradicting or negative with Buddha. They still get the benefit of being in his presence or in his teaching.
Yeah.
So it's not only about faith.
The power of the object. The power of the object.
Mm.
That's what we're talking about.
And the presence of something like Buddha or a stupa. I think that's the positive influence in a certain way. I don't know.
Yeah. The Greek has it. What does that say?
So all of saying trickle-down information through familiarity information sinks down deep into our emotional depth. I think that was in relation to our discussion of how you kind of move patience from the rational level into a kind of more instinctual response to it. Then in CBT, what is CBT? Okay, cognitive behavior therapy response of noticing when there is an emotional shift, even subtle, and then asking, what are these rapid flowing thoughts going through? The idea that subtle thoughts precede emotional visceral.
So I think that precede emotional and visceral,
Yeah. Olaf is saying, Nagas, I've read, symbolize this emotional depth of our psyche, where they hide and sometimes reveal their treasures. Yeah. I don't know much about those things, to be honest.
Well, not things with the animal things, the same as when we do the designate or liberate. It's about creating meaning for them. It's us creating meaning. So our motivation is to be good and we get the person, but we're also imprinting into the animals.
Yeah.
Hoping for them to have that.
Yeah.
Their temperate sufferings when they die. And hopefully that will help their rebirth.
Yeah. And that's what we hope when people come to Chen Raising. And just coming here to look at seeing the stupa, seeing the stupa, seeing the land muscle, that's it imprints positive seed.
And then they can die in peace.
Well, with at least that.
Hopefully. All right, let's look at
The secondary.
yeah, but before, actually, another point that I wanted to make is I had a look at Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemo, the explanation of patience in the second volume of his Lamrim Chemo. Lama Tsongkhapa presents patience in a different way. So, as I said, Shantideva does it with a case-by-case situation and explains how you apply the three types of patience to each case. Lama Tsongkhapa, on the other hand, deals with that from the viewpoint of isolating patience that willingly accept suffering, patience of certitude about the Dhamma, patience that pays no heed to harm that was done to you, and explains each one of them separately. So I thought that this is also useful. So what I did is I created an outline just based on Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation. I'll put it on the Dropbox today. I think that this is also helpful in terms of when you face a certain situation and you want to have a checklist of all, to cover all your bases, then that's also something that's helpful. And Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation, you can say, is more succinct than Shantideva. So, and it's not in verse form. So it's good to know what Shantideva says. It's good to know what Lama Tsongkhapa says, and then you can combine these two. So I wanted to look again at verse 42. Not this one. The outline. Where's the outline? The outline. This. All right, verse 42. So it's the actual section of reflecting on unwanted occurrences being due to one's own fault. So verse number 42 comes at the heading of reflecting on the harm brought upon you by another as your own fault, which we also discussed it at length yesterday with respect to thinking of karma, how when we experience a certain situation, it is a result of our own karma. But I think that we said that rather than, one of the points that came up was, rather than looking at others' misfortune and just kind of acknowledge that they get, it's not that they get what they deserve. They experience a certain situation because of their own karma. Particularly, it is to be applied to ourselves. I mean, of course, what others experience is also a result of their own actions. We don't want to remind them of that because it might be a bit, insensitive to do it, right? It's mainly to be applied to us as a mind training practice. So what I wanted to do is just to look at what Lama Tsongkhapa said in Lamrim Chenmo, explains that in a way that is similar to what Shantideva says, but still, I think, a nice and clear explanation. So if you have the book form, it's in the second volume in page 163. Here it says, on analysis of the cause that impels the harm doer, anger is unjustified. Oops, just a second. I'll just increase. Yeah, 163. Have I? All right. So Lama Tsongkhapa says the experience of suffering produced by those who harm does not occur causelessly or from discordant causes. So it occurs from concordant causes. That is to say, from non-virtuous actions you have done in the past. Therefore, harm doers are helplessly impelled to do harm by the power of your karma. So consequently, blame yourself thinking this is my fault and I'm wrong to get angry at others, and stop your anger on all occasions. For example, it is similar to the way that beings produce the guardians of hell with their own bad karma, and these guardians then inflict harm on them. So that's also related to the question that I think that Matt asked with respect to whether other people's karma, those who harm us, isn't it that they also perform actions? So here, Lama Tsongkhapa is echoing what Shantideva says. They are helplessly impelled to do harm by the power of our karma, which is an interesting notion, right? So someone is harming us because we've created the karma to be harmed. And therefore you can say that you draw others to harm you. So when we think about it in practical ways, suppose that in this life I punch Dechen. Don't worry, it's not going to happen soon. But let's say that I punch Dechen. I've created a negative action. In future lifetime, I will experience the result of that action. Could be in the form of Dechen in her other form, punching me. So you can say that because I punched her before, I've drawn her to punch me in my next lifetime. But still, you can say that, of course, responding to, even if she punches me in my next lifetime, she still creates an action. But you can say that the conditions for that were also created by me harming her before. It's complicated, isn't it?
But that's something too that I've heard a number of times when we meet people all the time, and you've said it yourself a few times, you just meet someone and there's just this feeling, it's like, why? And it's been said, it's like it's from a previous thing,
Yeah.
And you're drawn to each other, and you've got to sort it out in one lifetime or another, or it just gets worse. So this is why they become your object of compassion.
I just sometimes, because I've certainly noticed in my life that there are certain karmic things that keep on arising. Like not being able to sustain, say, a friendship or something like that. For any great length of time, say, you sort of think, like the causes of that, are obviously I haven't been a good friend in the past, so this is why this keeps on coming back. Sometimes I wonder though that whether it's because I've created the cause so that anybody else that has that similar karma, we just keep on playing it out with each other. It doesn't necessarily mean that I specifically had karma with them. We had similar karma, but not necessarily with them personally. I sometimes wonder that.
Well, as Geshe said today, which is always like a good line to come up with, karma is inconceivable, or the working of karma is inconceivable. So it's hard to know that it's hard to kind of, it's just like saying God's way are mysterious, so God works in a mysterious way. So it's hard to give a really accurate answer, but there's what we call collective karma. This is what we experience together, either belonging to one nationality, one country, one place, one group, one circle of friends, and so forth. So if you say that, for example, you're in a place in a country that is beset by famine, you experience famine. You experience that collectively with a group of people. So have you created with each other that karma to suffer together a state of famine? It's hard to think of how would that be created, but when I say that it's hard to think, it's more like it doesn't mean that I doubt there is some karmic link. There is karmic link, but how it was created, how will I know?
And there's those 4 points of karma that they talk about in the 35 confessional words. The environmental factor.
So there's
the people, the action, and what's the
so there is cause that is similar to the effect in terms of your behavior and in terms of your experience. Environmental effect and maturation effect. Like suffering, birth, and so forth.
And again, being pulled back habituation, being pulled to do it again and again.
And that's considered to be the worst result, So it's quite interesting because for us, we think that when we create a negative action and we think of the karmic effect of that, the thing that terrifies us mostly is suffering, right? So, for example, if I become angry and I harm someone out of anger, and then I think of karma, the thing that scares me the most is the resultant suffering that we'll experience on that basis. But it is said that worse than that is the causally concordant effect in terms of our behavior, because you develop habituation with anger. So then you create more and more avenues of suffering in the future. So that's actually much worse than one instant of suffering.
I think those 4 principles of karma are not, I don't think people have spent enough time on packaging the influence and the impact, and the profundity, the expansiveness of those 4 principles. Huge.
Excuse me. What about the wording used in translation that, fault and blame? For me, it has a negative connotation. So is that better to use some other words of this, or the translation cannot? Because when you
fault and blame?
Fault
and blame.
Yeah,
okay.
Fault and blame, yes.
Yeah.
That is the translation of that there. It has a negative connotation. Is that doesn't give a little bit negative effect on thinking in that terms, negative terms?
Well, that's also the way that it is expressed in Tibetan. It's like if you create a negative action, that's your fault. Or it is a faulty action. So the same, it's also found in the original language. I mean, Tibetan is not the original language of this text, but that's the way it is presented. But I wanted also to look at other section from Lama Tsongkhapa's text that also answers one of your questions to Geshe today. So in page 173 in the Lamrim Chemo, I think 173, let's see. I've lost it. I'll find it later, but it was also, Lama Tsongkhapa was referring to how when you experience a certain situation of suffering, you can think that past accumulated negative action has been purified. But Lama Tsongkhapa, it's to that in saying that not only it is purified, you can also think that it is now purified in a slight situation of suffering. It could have had the potential of resulting in something that is more disastrous, much greater in the future. So not only it is purified, it is purified in an easy way. So let's say that you experience kind of pain that would normally really affect your mind heavily in this life. So Lama Tsongkhapa suggests another perspective on that. He says that, well, it could have been much worse. Could have been like 10 times worse than that. It sounds like a disaster. It feels like a disaster in this life, but you actually got the upper hand. It could have been much worse. That's paraphrasing, of course, what he said. So the last thing that I wanted to refer to from yesterday and today, from the discussion that we had yesterday and today, was also in reference to Matt's question related to verse 48. Let's look at verse 48. It says, by taking them as objects, I purify much negativity through patience and depends upon me. They will proceed to hell suffering for a long time, right? So it follows up on verse 47. Having been instigated by my own actions, those who cause me harm come into being. If due to this, they should proceed to sentient beings, am I not destroying them? By taking them as objects, I purify much negativity through patience. By independence upon me, they will proceed to hell, suffering for a long time. So Khenpo Kunpen says in relation to this section in this book, in page 210, which I thought it's also kind of just something helpful to think of. So he says, if we're able to practice patience towards the enemy who harms us, our many evil actions of the past will be cleansed and great accumulation of merit will be brought to completion. It is thus that our enemies bring us benefit, but they, because of harm they do to us, the cause and condition of their negative action, will have to languish. So it is said for couples in the hell of unrelenting peril, all for the sake of aggression that is taken only an instant to accomplish. They will have to suffer the long-drawn agonies of hell. So in this commentary, it says that those who harm us, motivated by anger, benefit us, and also creating negative actions that result for them in suffering. So I think that we can also point it at ourselves, right? So we can change the position and think about it in relation to ourselves, in that when we get angry with another person, we said that before, that we're creating more causes for suffering for us in the future, but we don't think about it normally, do we? No, we get angry at another person and we only think of suffering and pain that person has given to us in this life. We don't think of the suffering effect that we will get in future lifetimes. It depends upon us getting angry.
Was it the chapter how, with Lama Tsongkhapa, how is it unfortunate if a man has to be executed from that by having his hand cut off? How is it unfortunate if by human sufferings you are released from hell?
Yeah.
Yeah, page 175.
175, thank you. Sorry, I just got the wrong page number. So that was in relation to Florian. Do you say Florian or Florian?
Florian. Yeah.
Florian. Yeah, so in page 175, reflecting on the benefits of dispelling immeasurable suffering. So reflect well on the differences between short-term and long-term suffering, thinking a man who is to be executed is overjoyed when he is freed from execution by having merely his finger cut off. how excellent it would be if, similarly, by means of this slight suffering of human hardship, I could permanently dispel the suffering of limitless cyclic existence in general, in particular the suffering of the miserable rebirths such as the hells. If you do this well, you produce fearless courage with respect to hardship. Yeah, so thank you for that. So we have just a few minutes left. Let's make sure that we just cover at least one secondary offense with respect to the Bodhisattva vow. So we've started to look at the three preceding secondary offenses, which, sorry, not the three. We started to look at the secondary offenses which are incompatible with the practice of the perfection of wisdom. So we've covered, I couldn't remember where did we stop, but let's just have a really brief summary of what we did cover. So there was number 27 that says, if you have the view that while Hinayana practitioners need to study, hold to, and train in the words and meaning of the Hinayana canon, Bodhisattvas do not, and were to propound that, it would be a secondary offense of abandoning the hearer's vehicle. So we've covered that. Then, if you neglect the Bodhisattva canon, well, there are things that you should apply yourself to, and apply yourself only to the Hinayana canon. It's a secondary offense of applying yourself to that system despite having your own way. So here, this explanation kind of starts to, it speaks about getting the right balance, right? So not disparage the Hinayana, but also make sure that you don't focus solely on the Hinayana and neglect the Mahayana. Then it says, if while there are things you should apply to in the Buddha's teachings, you do not apply yourself to them, but apply yourself to the Tirthikas, which mean non-Buddhist treatises, it is a secondary offense of exerting effort in non-Buddhist treatises where no effort should be made. No effort should be made in the sense that if you do it just because you like it, just because there is some intellectual challenge for you, where you should be actually spending your time on your development in a Mahayana way if you have taken the vow, right? So here it's for people that have taken the Bodhisattva vow, that have decided to train in the Bodhisattva deeds for the sake of attaining enlightenment, if you have made that commitment to yourself. So it's not generally for everyone. It is for those who have taken the Bodhisattva vow. If you've taken the vow, you don't focus, you don't spend time or effort in studying the Mahayana, and instead, most of your time or your enthusiasm, effort, is going into studying other philosophies. It is a secondary offense.
This seems to be a contradiction to another secondary offense that came up earlier, I can't remember which number it is, in regards to, as Bodhisattva, applying themselves to different realms of knowledge so that they can be of benefit to all in different ways.
Yeah. So that's why I said that kind of, it seems that these first few ones are about getting the balance, the right balance. So we did say that Bodhisattvas need to apply themselves to gaining knowledge of the 5 fields of knowledge. Not only the Buddhist knowledge, but also the medicine, the arts, the crafts, grammar, and so forth. These are all ways of benefiting sentient beings. So you do need to do that, but also you need to get your priorities right. In a sense that I think that if you're a Bodhisattva and you've taken the Bodhisattva vow, then you should consider what are your priorities in the stage of development. There will come a time in which you'll have to train also in other things, in the medicine, the arts, and so forth. But then, if you focus on other things without making sure that, first of all, your resolve to attain enlightenment for the sake of others is strong enough, and that you also develop both method and wisdom, if you focus just on the limbs and forget about the main thing, it's dangerous. There's a danger that you will lose sight. And I think that happens. It happens to us quite a lot. I think that one thing that I think that we encounter again and again is the excellent wish to do some social work at Buddhist centers, which is a great thing. So we come across the Mahayana tradition, we become really enthused about the benefit of others, working for the benefit of others. We want to be more engaging with society, to practice engaging Buddhism and so forth. But what happens sometimes is that people become so enthused about it without really placing a lot of effort or emphasis on still continuing on with the development of compassion and wisdom. So then they get burnt out. They don't put a lot of emphasis on learning more ways, more techniques in order to deal with difficulties, in order to practice patience, encounter difficulties and so forth. People are, particularly when you do social work, you encounter people that sometimes have difficult background, difficult situations, so not always your efforts are received well. So then when people reply in a way that you feel unkind, tend to kind of be deflated or burned out and so forth. So I'm saying that because there is, working for the sake of others is excellent. Benefiting others in many different ways is excellent. But then there is that the root things that we should be doing as bodhisattvas, which is kind of still placing most of our efforts into a combination of method and wisdom, and other things become branches for the time being. But then as we progress along the steps of the path, those priorities change. So it depends upon where you are. So we need to have, first of all, a good understanding of the steps of the path in general, but also to constantly have a self-evaluation of where we are at the moment and what should be our priority. So just before we leave it off for now, I just wanted to kind of look at the next one, which I think that we also covered. So we'll continue with that tomorrow. But it says, so one of them is that so number 21 says that while there are things you should apply yourself to in the Buddhist teaching, you do not apply yourself to them, but apply yourself to non-Buddhist treatises. This is a secondary offense. Then it says, there may be a need to apply yourself to those texts if you delight in them. So if your delight in that remains throughout the beginning, middle, and end, it is a secondary offense of delighting in the efforts made in non-Buddhist treatises. I don't think that we've covered that before, so I just wanted to say maybe a couple of words in relation to that. When it says here, if you delight in those treatises, and that remains throughout the beginning, middle, and end, it could be understood as if kind of, let's say that you apply yourself to non-Buddhist teachings and you delight in them to the point in which you're starting to accept their positions. Like, I think that Thupten Chodron in her commentary says that suppose that you invest your time and energy in studying Christianity, which is it's not bad. But again, you need to look at it from the perspective of having taken the Bodhisattva vow and having set your priority to attain the state of enlightenment for the sake of others. So suppose that you then study other things and you delight in them to the point in which you think that actually I really like this assertion of a creator God. It really appeals to me. Your attention is being set off. So that's a secondary offense. This is not to say that studying Christianity or other religions is not good. It's just to say that in terms of having made a certain commitment, when you allow other things to shift your focus from that commitment to the point in which you delight in those things that shift your focus and it can cause you to give up on your commitment, it's a secondary offense in relation to the Bodhisattva vow.
And this is just something that I just had worked out the other day when I was listening to Virtuous Action, with that beginning, middle, and end. That I'm not really clear about what that means. And he clarified by saying, just make sure, I'm just wondering if I used to see if I've got it right. The beginning is like listening to the teachings and reading and stuff like that. The middle is reflecting and contemplating everything, and then the end is the actual sitting down and meditating on it. That's what we're referring to when we say at the beginning, middle, and end.
You can say that. I think that's one way of understanding that. Another way of understanding it, I think that in terms of motivation before performing an action, the performance of the action, and then at the end becoming really happy that you've done it. So I think that you can understand it in those two ways. It's not either this or that. You can say that you delight in that in terms of your study, reflection, and meditation, or that you have that delight in the motivation for studying that to begin with. In the actual study, you've done that. At the end, you think that that was an amazing thing. I should definitely take up a theistic religion. So I think that both of these are kind of these explanations are valid.
So often the way with Tibetans, it could have this meaning, but then it also could mean this as well.
Yeah. Just choose, pick and choose.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
They often do that. Not uncommon.
All right. Let's do some serious dedication.
Yeah.
Due to this virtue, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. May the precious Supreme Bodhisattva not born and rise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. In this land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. You uphold the Sibu's moral way, says the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Vajranath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayer, honoring the three jewels. Myself and others, your disciples, please live long.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.